All right, and welcome to the Fleeting Thoughts podcast with Joe Gray and Channing Cornwall.
That's me.
Channing, Chanaroo, Chanalific.
You just came up with a whole slew of nicknames there, all back to back.
How's it going, Channing Tatum? Oh, wait.
Oh, come on, man. I got so much of that when I worked at the theater.
I bet.
Channing? Oh, like Tatum, huh?
Tatum?
Believe it or not. Like, he's older than me, but I existed before his career took off in any capacity. But I'm well. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm actually very well. It's day off. Just had wonderful Chinese food with some Kowloons, which was delicious. Their teriyaki chicken is wonderful. I'm glad you got a chance to try it out.
Yeah. No,
It's tasty.
Have a new thing to order now.
Yep. So thank you for lunch or dinner. I don't know what time it is, but I think it's like 5.
Yeah. Time is what you make of it. We're talking about time a lot today, aren't we, Joe?
Oh, shit. Time dilation relative to food consumption. Yeah, for sure. We'll get into all that in a bit. But how was your day so far?
It's pretty good. Just a standard day. It's working, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
It's been a very quiet weekend because my wife and my dog are out of town visiting family.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had this whole house to myself. So I've had a lot of time for self-reflection and meditation. I haven't really discovered anything about myself during this time, but
Yeah, that you enjoy having the company and...
I'm just desperate for people to come over.
Yeah.
I'm just like, Joe, please come over in my house. It's so quiet.
I'm so sad
quiet.
and lonely. No, I'm glad I can come over and hang out. And
Sit on my pillowy covered couch.
yeah, it's a massive couch you have here in your lovely home. Right on. Well, let's get into it. What is our first word? What is the word? What's the bird is the word?
This week, since last week it was pusillanimous, which was somebody who was afraid or cowardly, timid, if you will. This week I rolled with impavid, which is the opposite. It means not afraid or fearless.
Impavid.
Impavid.
How do you spell that? Impravid.
There's no R.
No, there's no R.
Impavid.
I had it written down correctly. I just didn't.
Imparvid.
Imparvid. Sorry about that. Yeah, impavid. And that means to be fearless.
Mm-hmm.
So that dog was impavid.
What dog?
You know, that dog. The one that was walking toward the volcano to save its owner. You remember that dog, right? That impavid dog.
Nope.
That's a good name for a dog.
Impavid.
Impavid, the dog.
Everybody, I feel like we just call him Pavy. Just like,
Pavy?
Oh, Pavy.
Pavy, the impavid dog.
Sounds like a superhero name for like a 50s like cartoon. It's Impavid. The Wonder Dog.
The Wonder Dog. Who's
so
also
fearless.
a superhero and can talk in English. Yeah, that's a good word. I don't think people use that word very much.
No, I mean, I feel like I've heard it before. Yeah. It sounded familiar when I saw it, but I thought it was interesting and kind of played well off of one of last week's words a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a cool word.
I think pusillanimous is still my favorite. I haven't ran across one yet that I like more than that. Now, when I'm trying to find new words to talk about, I'm constantly comparing them to pusillanimous.
Yeah, well, you
It's
got a high standard now. You got a bar you've set, and it's that fucking word, that weird ass pusillanimous. It's like when everyone votes the same way. It's pusillanimous. It's unanimous.
Unanimously, we
Pusil.
were all scared, so we just voted for the same guy.
Yep, because he scares us.
Well, what are you bringing to the table this week?
I got a word that I like a lot. It's a biology term, apoptosis.
Apoptosis.
I first heard that word, I think, in a anatomy and physiology class, and it's related to, or it means cell death. So it's a natural part of a cell's life cycle in, like, a cell. You know what I'm talking about? CELL.
Yeah, like blood cells.
Blood cells, yeah, and skin cells and
brain
things
cells.
like that. So they have a series of they go through a series of mitosis where they separate and duplicate themselves in order to regenerate and all that. And part of that is eventually it will run out of genetic material to or it'll duplicate itself incorrectly, and then enzymes will go in and tell it to kill itself.
So the enzymes are like Nazis a little bit.
And the cells are like Jews.
Yes.
No, it's actually it's less dramatic than all that. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's a good thing for the cells to go away so that they don't become cancerous, because essentially cancer is just a cell that doesn't die, a cell that doesn't, it just keeps on reproducing itself and it just won't stop, and so it just becomes a uncontrollable lump of cells in whatever area that it creates itself, so or it starts happening. So
I just picture the enzymes as like bouncers.
Yeah,
they just see that and they're just like, oh, we got another retard over here. We got to get this guy out of here.
Yeah, and they go in and go up. You gotta go down. Sorry, you're not.
We got to break you down.
Yeah, I like cell reproduction is really interesting, but I like the word apoptosis. It's just a funky word for programmed cell death. It's
and like you mentioned earlier, it's a good rap name too.
Yeah,
we were gonna become a rapper. Like,
my name's Apoptosis, and
with the mostest.
Apoptosis with the mostest. I kill cells. I kill all your cells for the good of the colony of cells.
You got to rhyme.
That didn't rhyme at all. I haven't thought about it enough.
It's okay, Apop. You got time.
Apop. That's what I call my my dad. What's up, Apop? And then it's got tosis at the end, which is like halitosis, which is bad breath, which is something I try to fend off as well.
I hope most people do, but there are people out there.
Yeah, some people have really bad breath, and it is difficult because you don't want to offend them by telling them, and yet it's offensive to you because you're offended by their breath physically.
That just any smell,
horrible.
like body odor.
Yeah.
People
are so sensitive, and the reason they smell like that is probably not like something they chose. Like they do in some way. Like maybe they could change it, but a lot of people, like poor people, or people who don't realize the benefits of having good hygiene. Like they were never taught, and so they don't realize it, and they smell horrible, but they probably have bad living skills, like life skills, and so they don't.
They probably don't even realize
they don't have
smell
access
because they're just around themselves all the time. So
right.
they're acclimated already.
Yeah, they don't know that they smell that bad, and so they walk around, and then it's difficult for everybody else because you don't want to tell them. You don't want to be like, dude, you fucking reek.
You're
go away.
In this whole place. With
you make it hard to be around you. Maybe you're a good person, but it doesn't matter at this point.
In my book, you're already losing points as far as being a good person.
I
can't even
physically,
stand next to you.
I can't. You have to get past that. I can't get past that. Sorry, you're physically disturbing my body. I can't deal with it. Sorry. You stink.
Speaking about stink,
stink
Interstellar. We watched that on Friday.
No, that didn't stink.
No, I know. It's a good. I just thought it'd be a funky segue.
It's pretty funky.
Body odor to Interstellar.
Body odor. That's my other rap name. Body odor.
That's the name of your first album.
Yeah, Apoptosis.
Apoptosis
brings
body odor.
Body odor. Yeah, Interstellar. We watched the movie, and it's got Matthew McConaughey. It's got Topher Grace randomly shows up in it. It's got
John Lithgow.
John Lithgow's in it for a little bit. It's got a lot of cameos because I wouldn't call them main roles at all, but they definitely are famous people in the movie.
Michael Caine, Matt Damon.
Yeah, I was gonna say, spoiler alert, Matt Damon's in the movie. I bet you didn't know that.
I think it's not a spoiler if you know about an actor. It's who he is and what he does would be the spoiler.
Yeah, well, I thought it
Or
was very
doesn't
surprising
do.
just that he was in the movie. I didn't expect it at all, but I guess if you look it up, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I didn't look at much of the movie before I watched it, but
I didn't. I
didn't know what to expect.
I try not to. I usually like maybe glance at reviews to see if people generally like it or generally don't, and then I just go watch it anyway. It doesn't really affect my decision, but
Yeah, I find preconceived notions kind of ruin movies at times.
no.
You know, you expect it to be really good, and it's not quite as good as you expected. You weren't blown away, and so you think it sucks. And if you go into a movie that you expect to be terrible and it's decent, then it's like awesome because you know, your expectations were low. So it's good to go in with less expectations and less less critics and people telling you a ton about it. So. But that set aside, we're going to tell you what we think about it, and so don't listen to us until you go see the movie. But yeah, it was good. It was entertaining, fun to watch, really well done. The pacing is good for being such a long movie. It didn't seem like it was that long. It got a little over.
I think towards the end, I was like, okay, let's wrap. Let's get to the point. Like,
totally.
At a certain.
Yeah,
probably like 3/4 of the way through, I was like, okay, you've had a lot of setup. Let's. I'm just like, come on.
Yeah. Oh, it's got Anne Hathaway
around.
as well. She's a major actress in it, and I thought she did a great job. I'm not a huge Anne Hathaway fan, like all the time, but she was in the Dark Knight movies, and she did a good job as Cat Lady.
Cat Lady.
Cat Lady.
Cat woman in the Dark Knight Rises. You got it.
Cat female.
Anyway, Christopher Nolan, I think, uses a lot of the same act. Like Michael Caine is, I think, in almost every single movie he does.
Yeah,
and,
right. Yeah.
Christian Bale was in a few, 4 of them, I think, because he was in The Prestige as well.
Oh, did Christopher Nolan do The Prestige? Yeah. That's a great movie too.
Yeah.
That's
he did that right after Batman Begins.
Another wishy-washy, what the fuck is going on kind of movie. I love The Prestige, though. That and The Illusionist came out at like the same time.
Yeah, I remember people getting them all mixed up all the time.
It's easy
and
to
they were
mix
both
them
good
up.
movies,
too.
For totally
very
different
similar themes and content, but great movies, both of them.
But what else did you think about Interstellar?
I don't know. It was just a very surprising plot line, and as in, like, I thought it was just going to be a standard sci-fi movie, and it was more of a. It was definitely sci-fi, but with less of the fiction. Like, I mean, it was a sci-fi because it wasn't real, but they really tried to use a lot of science and a lot of theoretical physics and astrophysics and a lot of really interesting twists and turns, and it really straddles the line between supernatural and scientific because a lot of unknown science is kind of indistinguishable from supernatural stuff because we don't understand how it works, and so they kind of bring that into it as in, like, science will explain all this stuff, we just don't always know exactly what's going on behind the scenes and within the realm of especially like space travel and stuff. And I thought that they could have done a little bit more in the context of where Earth was at, because I thought that it was a little confusing. They just sort of bring you into the movie and say the Earth is dying and food is run out and we don't have any wars, and there's a lot of stuff that I would have liked to kind of get a backstory about that would have helped me get a little bit more into why I should care about what's happening. Like, I don't know. It just was kind of, they just gave you that stuff and said, take this for granted. The Earth is dying. These people are kind of at their last resort, but they somehow have the resources and ability to travel into deep space.
Yeah. I think a lot of the movie was kind of like that. Or you just kind of, they just kind of, they didn't really explain it. They were like, this is just how it is because it is, and like to really enjoy, you kind of just have to not think about it and just kind of ride it out. Like, I found myself trying to think about all that stuff while I'm watching. And I'm like, wait, what? But why is that? Like, why can you do this but not this? And at a certain point, I'm just like, I just have to just watch the movie. Otherwise, I'm just not gonna have any fun with it.
Yeah, it's I think you kind of have to just go along for the ride and just see what's going to happen. And that was fun. I definitely kept you thinking and kept you going. And there weren't points where you were just like, this is boring. Like it didn't, I thought it was very interesting and intricate and confusing at times. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, really
where are they going to go with this?
Yeah,
like,
you have to like really pay attention to that movie. It kind of reminded me of Inception, where it's like it's very easy to get lost if you're not paying attention to all the like little bits of dialogue. And then they have all these rules that they're just bringing up, about the time being different for people on Earth compared to the guys traveling to find a new planet for Earth, or for Earth's inhabitants. And so it would get kind of like confusing, like you said, in certain spots, because you're like, wait, how much time has gone by now?
Yeah.
Why is time changing so much for all these people? And then
I think one of the things that was kind of confusing was the amount of fuel that they were using all the time, because they were always talking about how they didn't have enough fuel to do this or that, but they somehow just kind of were able to do a lot more with their time than it seemed like they would have fuel to do, but they never really gave you a fuel gauge to look at. Like, there wasn't like a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 kind of countdown of fuel. So they end up like using a ton of fuel at the end to like finally do this one project that they were trying to get to, because they kind of, they're kind of stuck out in space doing their stuff, and they just have very limited resources, and they're doing some pretty incredible shit with their spaceships. And for the most part, I thought it was just, very interesting future predictions, like what are spaceships going to look like? What kind of, I think they really tried to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah.
With the limited amount of knowledge that you can get into a movie that has such complicated science,
Well, yeah, it's
that's
using
theoretical.
All that theoretical science, and then I feel like people who maybe have studied some of it would probably understand and make sense, but I feel like it might alienate a lot of people because they are just throwing a bunch of crazy big terms around, and I mean, obviously they can't just stop and try to really intricately explain it to you, because then it's not really an entertaining sci-fi movie anymore. It's like a documentary or a science film.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I've read books with time dilation being used, so it's like I understood it enough to where I could enjoy the movie, but I could see it making some people just be like, "What? That's stupid. I don't understand." Like, because they definitely try to pull in a lot of like real world science as much as they can. Like, I'm sure that they probably studied a ton of this shit as they were writing the script to try to fit it in, but. Overall, it was really good. It has some of the best music, like score-wise, that I've heard probably in a movie this whole year. I can't really think of another movie where I was like almost more enthralled with the music than what was actually happening on the screen. And like they did a really cool job with. I know Gravity did this too, with just how silent space really is. Like any scene that's like outside the spaceship, there's no sound whatsoever, which is how it apparently really is. I haven't been to space. I couldn't tell you from personal experience, but apparently there's an absence of sound and light. So, not light, really, because you can see the sun. But I mean, an absence of sound.
Well, sound has to travel through a medium. It can't exist in a vacuum. In space, there's no air, and sound travels through air, which is which is chemicals or molecules, and it can travel through wood, it can travel through a pillow, it can travel through things. It can't actually exist in the absence of some substance.
Yeah.
And so in the vacuum of space, there is no sound, and so explosions have the sound that can exist inside of the ship, but outside of the ship there wouldn't be any noise. It wouldn't travel out because it would just have nothing to travel through. Light can travel through the vacuum of space, so we would be able to see all that stuff. That's how we see stuff anyway, from outer space or whatever. But yeah, I liked it because at some points it would like show you the perspective from a distance from outside of the ship, and it would be just completely no sound. But what's going on is so dramatic and explosive or whatever that it's even more dramatic without sound, because you're like, oh shit, this is real, like, or this is really happening in space. There's no one coming to help. They're stuck there, and the turmoil that's going on in their heads and in the ships is the opposite of silence.
Yeah.
But the silence kind of just really like it gives you that kind of desolation kind of feeling. It's ramping up with all this music, and the music is super dramatic, and then all of a sudden like something happens, and then it goes to an outshot and there's no sound. It just cuts sound, and you're like, fuck, what's going on now? It's kind of like in a war movie when a bomb goes off and there's that ringing, and they can't hear anything. It's just this dull ringing sound, and it just gives you a little bit more sensory data that makes you feel more in the moment or whatever. Definitely gives the right tone for what they're trying to display in the movie. So yeah, that was great. The music was great. It was good enough that I didn't notice the music, which is great. You shouldn't be distracted by the music. It should complement what's going on very well, and it should help you kind of with the pacing of what's going on in the movie.
I can always tell good music in the films, because there's a lot of movies that I've seen where when the music kicks in, it's like your heart rate kind of picks up a little bit. Like it adds that extra bit of intensity to what's going on.
Yeah.
Or even slower scenes. Sometimes if they have like a nice soft melody that kind of
subtle
goes along with it, it just kind of maybe tugs at your heartstrings just a little bit more, because something sad's happening, and then this perfect music that just portrays what's going on accompanies it. And music is just incredible with how it can affect your emotions. It's really cool, but they did a great job with it in that film. So much so that I almost want to just like buy the score and just listen to it, because it was really good.
That's the same with Tarantino movies. The music choices and the scores and the like random pop culture reference music that he'll put in them, it tends to just work really well. It's really fun. It's not as subtle as most movies. In Tarantino movies, it can be over the top, like in Django.
Django has like one of the more outlandish.
Yeah, but throughout the whole movie, the soundtrack is just fucking awesome. Just really, really fits the scenes. And I was thinking about buying the soundtrack for that, because it's got some modern music, it's got some classic music, and then I'm sure there's some just instrumentals that are probably really, really good as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, when they do soundtracks, do they put them in the order that the songs appear in the movie?
I don't think so.
Or is it just whatever order they want to put it into?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow work that out with like record companies. Like maybe some people pay a little bit more to have their track higher up the list because there's the higher probability that it would get listened. I don't know.
I don't know.
I never was huge into soundtrack. I never have downloaded or bought any like a lot of soundtracks for anything. So I've never really, or even when I did, I didn't really pay attention to the order.
Yeah.
You just kind of look and like, oh, I like that song, and that song, and then you either skip to those tracks or you just listen to the whole thing.
I just think it'd be fun if it was in the order that the movie was in. It'd be like watching the movie, but just through the soundtrack. So it's in the same order, so you can kind of remember the scenes. I was just curious about it. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting idea. I'm sure some soundtracks do that on purpose. To match the movie, at least in some way. Because it only makes real sense to match the movie, right? If you're going to put it in a fucking order,
it's probably just up to whoever is responsible for like mixing the soundtrack. They get to decide how they want to go about doing that, I imagine.
For sure. So, what are some other sci-fi movies or shows that you're really that you really think are worthwhile? There's a lot of them.
There's a lot, yeah.
But whether or not they're any good or not,
I like science fiction is probably one of my favorite genres of film and literature and stuff. Which like I was trying to think of maybe like a top 5 earlier, and it's really tough because there's like science fiction almost breaks down into its own subgenres, because you have like the futuristic like space. Like science fiction, you've got like dystopian future. Like there's just so many like little kind of like horror stories. There's like your ghost stories and your monster stories.
Right, and there's supernatural stuff.
Yeah. But as far as like sci-fi, one of my favorites it's kind of similar to Interstellar is a movie called Sunshine, which I was telling you about. I know you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I need to check it out.
Fantastic movie. It's got Cillian Murphy and Chris Evans is in it. But it's done by Danny Boyle, who did 28 Days Later, and written by Alex Garland, which he wrote like The Beach that had Leonardo DiCaprio in it.
That was a cool
and
movie.
he wrote Dread, that movie. He Alex Garland's one of those guys that any screenplay he writes, I'll just watch the movie because he wrote it. Like, I don't even care what it's about. But anyway, like, Sunshine's really good. It's about the sun is like dying and Earth is getting colder and colder with each passing year to the point where it's just like winter year round. And so these guys launch an expedition to essentially drop off a nuclear bomb, like shoot it into the sun in the hopes that it will reignite it. And then like one expedition already goes out and then they get lost. Like they just drop off and they aren't heard from again. And so this is the movie takes place with the second expedition going out. But it's just really good science fiction movie. It explores like kind of the psychology of people being trapped inside of a small spaceship together for really like, you know, years of time that go by between traveling from Earth to the sun. And what's cool about this movie too is the first half of it's a very sci-fi movie, and then the second half of it almost becomes like a horror movie in a way. Like a third party enters that affects their mission and is like stalking them in their ship, and it's pretty creepy and it's really cool. So that one's
I gotta watch it.
It's one of my favorite movies.
I wonder where I can find it because that's like a pretty independent film. I mean, I've never heard of it, and I've never seen it anywhere.
I have.
I don't know if it's you own it.
I have it. Yeah, I have it on
I'll
Blu-ray.
have to borrow it, and then
it's really good. I think I think it just came out during a time where a lot of other more popular movies were coming out because it did a run in the theaters for a while, and they did a lot of promotional stuff for it. But I think that I'm trying to remember what came out around the same time that probably just overshadowed it because I think that was one of those things that there were probably like 2 or 3 other way better or more popular movies that came out, and everybody went and saw that instead, kind of a thing. But beyond that, Blade Runner would be like in my top 3 too.
Okay.
That movie is awesome, but that's more of like the dystopian cyborg future. But that movie is just so good. About
I have never seen that movie.
Really, God,
I know a lot about it as far as like
it's so good.
You know, impact and stuff because it was Philip K. Dick and all that, and he's done a lot of really good stuff. And I'm sure I've seen some of the stuff that he's done as far as movies, but
Scanner Darkly,
and I know that Blade Runner is really good as far as like highlighting a lot of really interesting social parameters and things like that, and like implications of technology and stuff. Blade Runner, and then I was gonna say the Moon. Or is it called Moon?
It's just called Moon.
I think it's called Moon. That's the it's got what's that guy's name? I always forget. He is a good actor.
Oh, I know his name is like right there. I can't think of. I
always want to say Robert Downey Jr., but it's not him. It's a similar like 3-part name. He's in a ton of movies. He was in the Green Mile and shit. Look it up real quick.
He was in Iron Man 2, actually.
Yeah, he was in Iron Man 2 as the kind of guy trying to compete with Stark Industries. He's in a ton of movies and not always in
Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell,
there
yeah.
You go.
Not 3 names at all.
Well,
but 3 syllables.
Well, if you want,
3 syllables, which is I'm stupid. Moon was really good, very independent. Like I think he's like the only actor in it. There's like 2 actors in the whole movie. It's really good. And then there's actually the first Starship Troopers. I thought was really fun.
Yeah, that's a really good
fun
movie
to watch.
I said when I really started thinking about it, there's just so many Alien movies. Alien and Aliens are really good. RoboCop is awesome.
Is RoboCop a sci-fi?
Oh yeah,
really?
I mean it's like Blade Runner, that dystopian, that 80s vision of what the future was going to be like.
I guess kind of like Demolition Man is like
kind
that
of,
too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like science fiction, it starts to kind of blend into like action films and things like that. But
it's like iRobot. That was kind of the same thing. Oh, District 9 was the one that I was going to say. That's like amazing fucking movie as far as tone and setting and acting and crazy special effects and stuff. Just a really cool story.
That was one of those movies that I went into not really knowing what to expect, other than people were just like, "Oh, you got to see it. It's really good."
Yeah.
And so when Vanessa and I went and saw it, I think that was part of the charm of it, is that it was filmed and just felt a lot different than other sci-fi films.
Yeah.
It almost felt like it could have been just a documentary about
That's what they
how
were
life
trying to
was
do, I think.
really like.
Yeah. And interesting take on like racial discrimination and stuff, species discrimination in that movie.
Prawns, isn't that what they call them, right?
Prawns, yeah, stupid prawns, something. I don't know. South
Charlton
African accent
Copley,
is
man,
like
he is so
impossible.
Elysium, that's another.
Elysium is by the same guys. I don't think it was nearly as good.
No,
but interesting.
It was a more
sci-fi
like
stuff.
by the numbers kind of plot. I felt like, whereas District 9 was a very unique.
Yeah.
Setup.
Yeah, not as predictable for
Yeah.
sure. Much more visually like, what the shit is happening? Elysium's just definitely more predictable and what's going to happen. Battlestar Galactica is probably one of my top favorite shows, sci-fi shows. Is Doctor
Like the
Who
original
a sci-fi show?
Yeah, I would consider that
Sci-fi,
It's like a
adventure.
sci-fi fantasy type
Yeah,
thing.
fantasy too.
Or
But
when you say
it's
Battlestar
actually sci-fi.
Galactica, do you mean like the original series or the
No.
movie or like the
just
sci-fi reboot?
the
that they
modern show
did? Yeah.
reboot.
No, I think it was either it was a show in like the 80s,
like the 60s
right?
or
the
70s
Oh, was
or
it that
something?
far
It was a
back?
really old
Yeah.
show. I don't know. It might have been the 80s, but the more modern one I think was like early 2000s or late 90s.
Yeah, I think it
or
was
something.
early 2000s.
And Battlestar Galactica is amazing, really great to watch. And but I was never into Star Trek and Star Wars. I like the movies, but I wasn't like.
Oh, yeah,
they didn't
Star Wars.
like change my life like a lot of people. Like I don't know. I think people like Star Wars a lot for a lot of different reasons, and it's great.
Yeah,
Great
for me
movies,
it was one of those things I just grew up with. Like I was
Yeah.
introduced to it when I was like
yeah, it was just another movie.
probably 4 or 5, and I mean it's life changing, but not. It didn't. They didn't literally make my life better, or it just.
No.
It was life changing in that it introduced me to like this whole new world. Like I don't remember really being interested in anything science fiction or imaginative or creative like that until I watched Star Wars, and then it opens so many doors for your imagination, I feel like, and that's why I think that and Star Trek are so important to so many people, because it showed you the things that you probably would have never even thought of, and then it's like opening these just doors, and then all of a sudden you start to think of all these other things, and I don't know, it's just really cool. I think that's why sci-fi is so interesting to me, is it's always grounded in some kind of reality and then just goes way off sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between sci-fi and fantasy. Is sci-fi is like based on at least some type of rational scientific kind of basis, like based on current inventions, based on principles and scientific things. It doesn't try to be too supernatural or fantastic or whatever. Whereas you can have a movie like The Lord of the Rings, and they just say, no, there's magic, so we can do literally whatever we want. So, but in sci-fi, it doesn't give. They kind of have to explain everything scientifically, or at least practically. Like, it's not like they have laser guns, but laser guns are somewhat, you can justify it through physics and all that, which is I think why I think it's a little bit more impactful and more satirical, because sci-fi can show us what we predict our futures to be. Fantasy, it can't be us, it can't be our world, because the things they do are not our world. They're otherworldly. They're other universes. They don't adhere to anything that we could call reality. So you can get away with stuff like that. Like Harry Potter, that's not. They say it's Earth, but that's there's no
everything that's happening.
There's no way they could hide all that forever for so long, and we wouldn't know about this magic shit going on in this school, and this war is going on in this magical world that's just around the corner, just out of our reach or whatever. But yeah, I like sci-fi a lot, and it can be really subtle. It doesn't have to be like super futuristic. What's that one movie with Tom Cruise, not The Fifth Element. That's another fucking amazing movie.
Was that Minority Report or
Minority Report?
Oh,
what was the other one?
Well, they call it Live Die Repeat now, but it was Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah, that's good. I thought that wasn't nearly as good as Minority Report. Minority Report was just wonderful.
I don't think I've seen. Is Minority Report's the one where they Isn't that where they stop crime before it like happens?
Pre-crime.
Yeah.
And then the Minority Report are the reports of when the precogs are wrong, which they can't do their jobs. They can't do pre-crime if the precogs are wrong. So there's 3 precognitive people that live in this kind of soup, and they're like sedated all the time, and then they have stuff connected to their heads, and they predict the future. And one of the precogs was like way more powerful than the other 2. They're all like relatives. They're like sisters or brothers or twins or something. And one of them is more powerful than the other 2 and kind of confirms what's going on. And so, but that one actually had like 2 different outcomes, or it predicted one outcome and that never happened. And so it kind of ruins the whole thing in the movie if the public finds out about these Minority Reports, these like one-off chances where the precogs are wrong. And because if they're wrong, then the future isn't determined and something else might have happened, so you can't go put somebody in jail before they commit their crime.
Yeah.
Which is what they're doing in the movie.
I'm going to watch that. I've never seen it. Like, I know.
Oh, it's amazing.
And it was one of those movies that just has kind of slipped through the cracks, and I never got around to watching.
Very futuristic and cool. A lot of fun to watch. Very mysterious, mysteries and detective type stuff and things.
Dark City is another good one. I just thought of that one randomly. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I have. That's the
that one blew my mind at the end when they finally when it reveals what exactly is going on.
I don't even remember.
That's the one that has Rufus Sewell in it, where he wakes up and doesn't remember who he is.
Yeah.
And randomly all these people fall asleep, and then they get changed around.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah, and then it's all a simulation or whatever. And it's in that room that guy up in a. It's
just in a giant cube space
is
thing
it the
in
cube
space.
One?
Yeah.
There's another movie called Room 42 or something, and it's really similar. It's like this guy invented this virtual reality system that everybody's living in or whatever, and it's they can go back and forth, but they start these crazy lives in the virtual world, and those lives start to bleed into reality because there's so many people that are real in it or something. Those are really interesting. Simulation movies obviously are really interesting, like The Matrix, which is sci-fi.
That's good. As I feel like we'll just be
almost
every
like
a 5-hour conversation about sweet sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
There's so many of them. It's really hard to narrow down just a few that are really good.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think you just there's just so many of them. They've been doing it for so long. For show. Sci-fi. Super sci-fi for serious nerds. Well, I think we've exhausted that topic. We could go on to talk about why people like that kind of stuff, but it's pretty obvious. It's fun. It really engages your imagination and what the possibilities are for the future. And that's a lot of fun. It's kind of like historical fictions that are based like Braveheart or something. They're really fun because they give you a glimpse into what it was like to be 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago or whatever.
But they got to give you a sweet hero's journey.
Hero's journey. Yeah, heroes are a huge part of
hero's journey is an interesting thing. We should set aside a podcast to talk about that. It's a very cool literary tool that they use.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of I don't even know what's a story that doesn't have a hero. I mean, other than really negative, stories that have shitty endings.
Yeah, I remember Beowulf's one of the first examples of the hero's journey being used.
Yep,
but
makes sense. I mean, it's that's the
fucking
stories.
Old as shit.
The stories that people tell each other. I'm sure tribes have been telling stories for a long time. Get out of here, Kit. I know you're friendly, but it's I think you're just trying to manipulate me. So yeah, anything else we want to talk about as far as movies and stuff?
I don't think so. I think if we miss anything, there'll be ample opportunities in the future to discuss films.
For sure. I think the next movie we should go see is Nightcrawler.
Yeah, I want to see that. And then I want to see Big Hero 6 as well.
I know.
There's something else.
Let's go right now. Let's go tonight.
What are we standing around for?
No, I'm not kidding. Let's go we'll watch some more Walking Dead and then go watch a movie.
Actually, that's
I have nothing to do.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't have any plans. I was going to do laundry, and then somebody else was occupying it, so I don't think anybody wants to hear about our plans. But anyway, I did want to mention some other cool scientific news real quick while we're talking about science. I just read an article about scientists have created crystals that make breathing underwater possible.
Oh, I saw that.
Did you see that
the other day online? Yeah, I didn't read the article. I
think I reposted it, but I read some of it, and it was essentially they created these super absorbent crystals that are very small, and you can carry them with you. And then I don't know if you like ingest them or if you just if you can just leave them like near your skin, or if you have to have them in your lungs, like you have to breathe them in, like you grind them up and breathe them in. But essentially they can absorb like way more pure oxygen molecules than a tank of oxygen like that you would use for diving, or if you have lung problems like medically, you would have to breathe oxygen, like old people have those oxygen things. This would essentially it also absorbs oxygen from the water. So these crystals essentially absorb oxygen and release oxygen as well. So essentially it's like a sponge for oxygen that is way more efficient than a tank of air. And so essentially if they can perfect it, people could just be underwater for hours and hours on end.
That's crazy.
And just swim around and explore and things. I think the biggest downfall is that it only absorbs pure oxygen, and people don't breathe pure oxygen. We breathe lots of a mixture of chemicals into our system, and pure oxygen can be very dangerous to us if we ingest too much of it. We can die. So they have to figure out a way to control it and regulate it in a way that humans can actually take advantage of. But I just thought that's interesting,
That's crazy. That's so cool.
Yeah, they're always coming up with crazy stuff. There's like this, I get these things on Facebook, and it's like This Week in Science, and it's always just like 10 different like discoveries that are just mind-blowing, and you're just like where are we going to be at in 10, 20 years when a lot of these early inventions and developments and all this stuff, like nanotechnology and stem cell research and stuff is, it's not available to the public in any way, and it's not necessarily practical for anybody to take advantage of a lot of these new things, but it'll be interesting to see if any of them get off the ground and are, commercially available to people.
Could you imagine just going to the supermarket? Oh, we're going to go to the lake today. I got to go buy my fucking swimming crystals at the store real quick.
Yeah, it'll be weird. I don't know. I mean, that'd be awesome. And then you just spend the whole time underwater, like just hanging out.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That'd be crazy. I love science. It's fun. I wish I was doing science. I wish I had studied biology or something in school.
I never had an interest in it in school. I appreciate it, and I love it's cool to read about the things they're doing, but I think the act of trying to understand all these things, I was just like, meh. Whatever.
Yeah, it's difficult, and it's not always practical. It's not always like, for any major, what do you call it? Like advances, in things like that. But obviously science is 100% necessary and has led us to the level of comforts that we all have, and that's where a lot of the commercially available stuff is in conveniences and food production and things like that.
I actually study a lot more scientific stuff now, because usually if I'm writing something and I come across something I don't really understand, I usually end up reading stuff on it for like hours, so that I feel like I know what I'm writing about when I'm writing it. So
yeah. You want to, especially if you're a writer, you don't want to be completely unreliable. Source.
Well, not even necessarily science. Like I was saying the other night, like I had to look up if a gun could explode in your hand, like if it could backfire and blow up on you, just for like one little scene in one of my books. I was like, well, this is what I want to happen, but if it's not something that's viable, I don't want to write about it. It just seems stupid to me.
Totally.
And I studied the whole process of blacksmithing for the first book I ever wrote, because the characters do some blacksmithing stuff, and I'm like, and as I went to write it, I was like, shit, I don't know anything about blacksmithing other than fantasy movie I watched where a fucking big muscular guy is banging on some like an anvil with a hot tempered steel. Like, I don't really know what the process is. Mm-hmm. So then I remember like studying all about like this like very basic level, like how you would go about doing that. And I don't know, it's cool. Like I learn more now, I feel like, just through random things like that I come across. The internet's a beautiful thing.
And in school you're kind of set with whatever the teacher wants to teach you, and it's not always interesting. And so when you're an adult, you're like, wait, I can go look up all this stuff on my own. But I love biology and genetics and physiology. It's all really, really interesting, and I always enjoyed those classes. They're very difficult, obviously, because that's very complicated stuff. That's not always very intuitive, to figure out. But definitely very fun and interesting and grounded in reality and not fucking religion. So that's always good. Another thing I read. Here's another. FYI.
Let's keep it going. This is our science episode.
These are all things that I just got like from Facebook, and makes me, I'm superior because I know them. But this was one that I thought was crazy. Sand tiger shark embryos eat each other in the womb until just 2 are left alive.
I remember. Yeah, you were talking about that.
So
they crazy.
It obviously gives birth to multiple, or it fertilizes multiple eggs, and then they grow to the age of like being able to have mouths and little, intentional apparatus with their nervous systems. And then out of competition, they eat and probably absorb the nutrients from the other eggs that are embryos as well. And I'm guessing the 2 left deal is that both are probably either far away from each other, or I don't know how they if they can be mobile in the womb or something like that. But that's just a weird concept to think that they are competing prior to being born, which just goes to show how ruthless it must be to be a fucking shark. I mean, they're killing their own.
It's literally survival of the fittest before you're even technically born.
I mean, it's obviously that's a pretty strong genetic, manipulator, is to have them, fight each other in the womb, and then when they're finally born, because some sharks give birth to live young, like they're fish essentially, so they lay eggs and then they fertilize them, but some of them have internal pouches like uteruses that they actually do give birth to live young, kind of like that's like a particular feature of fish, is that they don't give birth to live young.
Yeah,
so
they lay
some
eggs.
Sharks, I think technically they don't. The pouch is not technically a uterus or something, so it's.
What's the feature of what separates like mammals?
Mammals give birth to live
fishes.
young.
Yeah,
so that's one of the big differences. Like birds have eggs and they just hatch. So anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about, but
if people did that, it'd be cool.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
They little Mortal Kombat scenarios inside your uterus.
They used to have a sperm combat theory that sperm would compete and destroy each other inside of while they were attempting to fertilize an egg. Mm-hmm. This was like a scientific theory that they had that had no basis in like any evidence.
A cool idea.
They just thought that, well, they were trying to explain like why only one egg makes it, or one sperm makes it, you know, and so they thought that some sperm were like little warrior sperm, and they would go through and like kill all the other sperm off, and then they found out like through testing and science that wasn't the case, that it's just most sperm die due to, while they're traveling toward the egg, there are actually like chemicals in there that kill them, and then there's lots of other things that happen, you know, that they
this little Rambo sperm just
with little
ejaculate out with light machine guns, and they're just mowing everybody down as they're racing.
And that was like, I think that was somewhat of a misinterpretation of the whole survival of the fittest thing. You know, like they're just assuming that the ones that survive are the ones that were the strong fighters. But that's not necessarily the case at all.
No.
All the sperm are pretty much similar to each other.
Well, if that was the case, you would think that people wouldn't be born with any kind of disabilities. Because theoretically, if your sperm was like the best one and beat all the other ones,
And sperm is only half of the genetic material, so even if that sperm was somewhat more fit, the egg could also, that's the other half of the genetic material.
Well, maybe the sperm made it, but he was so injured that he gave birth to like an autistic child because he himself was so wounded from battle that he wasn't able to.
He just sort of like limped into the egg, like, oh, haha, I made it, like a war movie or something. Yeah, that's funny. I don't know. I don't think that explains autism.
No, I just
particularly well.
If you were going to keep going with that ridiculous theory of combative sperm, then might as well just tack that on there. That's all I'm saying. Yeah,
it's probably true.
It's equally ridiculous.
I think that happens. Oh, goodness. Too relaxed.
Yeah, it's these pillows, they just sink you in.
Yeah.
I can't, if I'm watching anything, I can't like lay back. I just fall asleep otherwise. So.
Yeah, I bet. I need a real uncomfortable couch so that I can keep paying attention to what I'm watching.
Just have a button that when you press like on the arm of your couch, like a little spike just comes up and pinches your balls hack or something.
Oh God!
Just to wake you up and make you feel a little uncomfortable. Yeah. Not enough to like make you bleed. Just enough to be uncomfortable.
Just
prod you a little
pinch in the nutsack.
Any other exciting science things you discovered on?
No, those were the two ones I read about this week. I don't know. Science is cool.
It's always new things too, like all the time. There's new discoveries happening probably in this very moment.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think most of them will affect me. So
probably not. You probably won't even hear about most of them.
I mean, medical science is obviously the most practical because it's helping people live longer. And then there's, life sciences and all sorts of different things. So go science. You
can just put, I think, the word science after anything.
Yeah.
And it's probably a science of some kind.
Wood science, couch science.
I bet you there's like couch science. There's probably people who, engineers that are... that look at every little section of a couch to figure out maximum comfort.
I was in
usability.
I was in a psychology class in college that was called engineering psychology, and it was the psychology of, or it was the study of how engineers use psychology to inform the way that they make things like in cars, they make things that indicate whether or not like you're coming close to the side rail, or whether or not you're like if you're gonna pass out. It'll like they can create an invention that like reads your how your eyes are like starting to close, and then it'll like give you a vibration. And so in engineering psychology, you would study how different things affect somebody psychologically. So like if you have a map and you put words on the map, whether or not it's more effective to use words or just symbols. And they find, they do studies and they find that like using a symbol that's like really clear and it's red and it's got a big X, that's more useful than writing no just on the map. You know what I mean? Or something like that. Or it's all about how people react to physical items and whether or not they're you can adjust the indicators or whatever to be more effective. It was a really cool class. It was like the most practical psychology class I ever took because it was just experiments. Did this work? Did it not work? Like the way that they design displays in jets. They use psychological things to figure out whether it's effective to use a dial or to use a blinking light or to use a vibration machine to indicate different things. And then the more effective ones win out because they are more effective. And that's engineering psychology. It's essentially exactly what it sounds like.
I thought at first when you said engineering psychology, it was going to be... the psychology behind people who want to learn about psychology, like engineering psychology students, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
just
like
the way it was phrased.
Manipulating people to be interested in psychology.
What's your psychology say about you because you're interested in learning about the psychology of other people?
I don't know. That sounds too meta. Too meta. World peace for me.
World peace.
Yeah, meta world peace is a person. That's a person's name.
What?
Yeah, there's a person named Meta World Peace. I'm not even kidding. That's I think he's a basketball player. In what is it? Key and Peele. They have a segment called like Meta or something, Meta News, and it's just Meta. His name's Meta World Peace, and he's just sitting at a news counter. And he just says nothing at all. He says gibberish sentences. Like he's like, in news today, rabbits are green, and that's like, oh, thank you for. That's just doesn't make any sense.
For a pointless, not true.
Yeah,
fact.
I think they're just making fun of the fact that his name is Meta World Peace.
Yeah,
I think he named himself or something like.
Either he had to change his name, or his parents are awful people. Do that.
Or really interesting and cool. Like he could love that name.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I'm not opposed to people having weird names. I think that's a good thing. I think people should have weird names. Did we talk about that? I think I was talking to somebody else, Kyle maybe, and we were talking about how if somebody's name was Banana, they probably would hate that when they were growing up. But at the same time, it's at least unique. It's at least a name that people would remember. Like that person's name is Banana legally. That's interesting as shit.
That's why my mom gave me Channing. Like
it's totally different.
And I've never met another person face to face with the same name as me.
And that's just more interesting. Why have a name that everybody else has?
Yeah, because she said that, like, I mean, my mom's name is Tina, and she, when growing up in her, like, a lot of her classes, there was like 5 other Tinas. Yeah. So she said it was just always annoying. And like, she, like, when it came time to, have kids and name them, she wanted to pick names that weren't going to be so standard. My brother's name is Nelson, which is a typical last name, I feel like, but not so common as a first name. I've never met another Nelson.
There's a Nelson Mandela, was a famous person. But yeah, definitely an old-fashioned name, Nelson. I think names are trends. There are trends in names,
definitely,
and a lot of Bible names, and then there's a lot of within a certain generation, everybody's naming their kids after certain historical figures or like pop culture people. So you have Elvis, comes about, and a lot of people name their kids Elvis for like a couple years, and then there's like a few Elvises out there in the world. There's a few Jesuses and
I read a study about
stuff like that.
Like when those Twilight books were really popular, a lot of children were being named Bella or Isabella because that's the name of the female character, and then Edward,
right,
is the head vampire. Like those names actually like went up the pole of popularity due to that alone.
For sure,
it's just kind of funny.
Yeah, it's like in one aspect, it doesn't matter what your name because you're just going to go by that. Like, you don't have a choice. And then in the other fact, if it's a really, if it's a name associated with, like, nobody names their kid Hitler, because that's just stupid. And but there's even other, just weird names. But I think coming up with something at least somewhat unique or individualized just gives the person a little bit more something different about them. I don't know if it's not good or bad, but I just think it's interesting.
I didn't even like my name growing up. I remember being made fun of like in elementary school.
Really?
Like, because my last name was Cornwall, and just 6-year-olds have a heyday with that for whatever reason. But I just never liked it growing up. But now I'm just like, I would never want another name. Like, this is awesome.
Oh yeah, and it's CC. That's cool.
It just sounds it's very long. Like both my first and last name are like 8 letters long. It just sounds very like
2 syllables.
It sounds like almost like old-fashioned, prestigious English gentleman. Like, that's just what I think of now when I hear my name said aloud. I'm just like, it sounds like I'm from not this country, and I don't know. It's just cool. Yeah, it's perfect for writing. It just makes me sound like I'm really smart, I feel like.
No, definitely.
This guy's name is Channing Cornwall. I'm going to read this book because of the name almost alone.
Yeah, and names can definitely skew people's perceptions. It's pretty superficial for the most part, but interesting. For sure.
And it just helps, I feel like, to remember, too. Like, I mean, you'll just remember that person because that name was so weird.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It sticks in your mind.
If I meet somebody and their name's Joe, I have a hard time remembering it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, like, I don't know. It's just hard for me to remember. Even though it's a very similar name. But I don't really pay attention when people tell me their names. I never remember names. I just assume within time, if I'm around them enough, I'll remember it.
That's kind of how I
don't try to.
I don't try to at first. I'm just like, if I see you
Sometimes
a couple more
should,
times, I'm sure that I'll just remember because I've seen you so many times.
Or I have to wait until somebody else says their name, like to call them. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, your name's that. And then I just pretend like I knew it the whole time because I'm like manipulative, like I don't want to admit that I never remember their stupid name.
It's always awkward when you've been around a person a lot and you've talked to them a lot, but you don't know their name. Like the coffee shop was still in the mall. For the longest time, I didn't know any of their names because I don't. Like, we never had an official greeting. We never like, hi, I'm Channing, and then they gave me their name and we shook hands, and then they made me a coffee.
Your coffee today.
They just were making my coffee, and then you go on such a regular basis that they knew my name because they probably saw it on my card or whatever when I would pay.
Your name tag if you still have it on you.
Yeah, but I never got to know their name, and then I just slowly learned their names through them telling me. They'd be like, oh yeah, so and so was doing this yesterday. I'm like, who was working yesterday? So, okay, cool. So her name is that.
Yeah,
and then
it was like a puzzle.
Because it's awkward to be like, hey, I know I've been here 100 times, but what's your name? Like, I don't. It's just.
And then if you forget it again, you're screwed. You're like a horrible person if you remember. If they tell you and then you're like, damn it, I forgot it because I wasn't really paying attention when they told me. You meet so many people and then they know your name somehow, like, easily enough because, like, you made an impression or something, but they didn't make an impression on you as much, or they're better at remembering names or something, and my name's really easy to remember, so everybody remembers my name. They're just like, oh, yeah, you're Joe. And I'm like, I don't know you, so how do you know my name? And then, like, I had to look on Facebook. I was sitting across from somebody who was, like, supposedly a friend of mine, and I had to go on Facebook, find a friend that I knew was a friend of theirs, and then go through their friends list, find their picture, and then I was like, and then I said their name to them. And I was like, oh, it's nice seeing you, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, this is perfect timing. Like, thank God for the fucking internet because I don't know this person's name, and we've hung out for like 2 years. Like, I've known them for years, and I know their name, but I couldn't think of it at the time because I didn't care enough to, like, memorize it well enough. You know what I mean?
I think in my mind, I just based off like a first impression, you're just like, I guess in my mind, I'm like, I'm probably not going. This person's not going to be important to me. Like I feel like most people just kind of make that decision subconsciously.
Sure.
And I feel like that affects whether or not you're going to even remember that person's name or anything about them. Because
sure.
I mean, like working in a retail store, you see so many people. Like most of the time, I'm just like, you're not really important to me beyond this interaction we're having right now.
Yeah.
But I feel like people do that with people all the time, unless you had like a great impression with them when you initially met, or you have a bunch of stuff in common and you actually think that you'll further your pursuit of a relationship with them platonically.
Well, it's like an investment. You don't invest a lot of time and resources into something that you don't think is going to be very long lasting, and so you just don't waste the time. And I always assume if something's important, it will come up enough that I'll just know it. I don't need to try to memorize everything that comes across my path in life. I just, if it's important, I'll know about it. It's fine, But names. What is in a name?
I don't know. What is in it? Didn't we had this discussion on a previous podcast? I think where we were talking about. Actually, I think it was the one that we didn't air.
Yeah,
where we were talking about last names and how they were probably created. Because
like
you
Baker
were with
and,
how it was like a title for what they did.
Good man, free man. It's just related to who they are or what they did.
I feel like Freeman became very popular after the abolishment of slavery
because a lot of them didn't have American names, so they were given American names, and they had original names, like slave names. And
like a bitter white guy who's like, well, you're a free man now. I guess you'll just be Ben Freeman, you fucking asshole. Get out of here.
Asshole. God, jeez. I don't know. My name's Channing Cornwall.
Actually, come back here. I'll give you some money. Work for me.
Yeah, seriously.
I need to pay you.
I got some shit to do. I guess I'll pay you. There's a new Martin Luther King movie coming out. I don't know. That should be pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know how that story ends, though. That's the tough thing about...
yeah, and I don't believe it.
Films.
I think that a lot of times historical figures get the stories that get told about them are super biased, and they don't know the whole truth, and they don't highlight any negative aspects of the character.
Yeah.
Like if it's a historical character that did something good, then there's no amount of like saying they did anything bad in their lives. I mean, they might bring up a couple little things here and there, but then it'll be like shrouded in mystery, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But you know, they weren't. You know, they aren't
awesome,
always
usually.
like saints.
Yeah.
They're usually just people who are passionate about a particular thing, and a lot of times it's like their motivation was not like Abe Lincoln's. The whole freeing slavery thing was like a huge side note, like propaganda thing for him. There was a lot of other political and economic things going on and related to that. But you know, you talk any shit about Abe Lincoln, and everyone's like, "Oh, you like slavery? You hate black people?" No, I don't. I just don't know that much about that guy. So
He never told a lie, so I've heard.
yeah, how could you possibly be a president of the United States and not lie? That doesn't make. How could you be a human and not lie?
I don't know.
Humans lie. They have to all the time. They don't even know the truth of themselves. They don't even know who they are. How can they tell the truth? Anyway,
That's like a whole other topic right there.
Fucking thing to bring up all of a sudden, and a lot of personal reflection in it.
Wipe those tears away.
I don't know who I am anymore.
That's actually a topic I want to talk about at a certain point. It's
Self-knowledge.
yeah,
We could talk about that.
it's an interesting thing to be brutally honest with yourself and where you stand in the world.
It's not easy.
No,
It's very difficult. It's ego-crushing.
but at the same time, it can be ego boosting, I guess, too. I mean, if you can recognize something about yourself that is really awesome.
That's true, too. A lot of times if we're too critical, we forget about the good things we can do and the positive things we can do. And it's important to be realistic and